So it's no secret that Borderlands 4 is going to have a significantly more complex and interesting gearing system than in any previous Borderlands game. We're not only going to have more gear slots than we've ever had, but a lot of that gear is just going to be much more interesting, is going to have a lot more options, and is going to allow for much crazier builds than we've ever had before, but potentially with a lot of added RNG. But with all of that being said, we have finally been able to see the legendary rarity of one of the new slots we're getting in Borderlands 4, the Enhancement mods. And this looks absolutely ridiculous, so ridiculous that it seems like you're going to be able to have the legendary power of multiple weapons from previous games just on your build at the same time. So if you haven't heard of Enhancement Modifications, this is going to be the gear slot taking over for artifacts from previous Borderlands games. So we're not getting artifacts, we're getting enhancement mods now. And the kind of special effect of this slot is that these items are going to give you a massive buff or new effect to weapons with a specific manufacturer's license part on it. And that description is very specific because these new effects or buffs you're getting don't require you have a weapon of that manufacturer. It just needs a manufacturer part on that weapon. So one of the first ones and one of the most interesting ones we saw was an epic or purple enhancement mod that was called Critical Elemental Leaper, and Leaper is a special effect. So weapons with Jacob's license parts gain a plus 40% chance to ricochet non-critical bullets. So that's just a completely new effect added to any weapon with a Jacob's part on it, which is absolutely ridiculous at a baseline, but once you add in all of the other effects of the game, it gets even more crazy. But this slot was generally just added to allow you to use the weapons you more want to use, because you could get a legendary weapon that's not a Jacob's, get a random Jacob's part on that, and now you can use this mod. This epic mod also had 3 different stats on it. So it had critical damage increase, accuracy, and weapon status effect damage, which is also something we'll have to go over when we go over the legendary. But that brings us to the legendary enhancement modification, which is Exploding Boom Puppy. And not only does this enhancement mod have the normal enhancement mod effect, but it essentially has a second one that is the legendary specific. Now, what I'm thinking based upon the naming of this specific legendary is that the secondary roll, so the non-legendary roll effect on this, is able to be randomly rolled just as the stats are on this, just as our legendary weapons have their one legendary weapon part, and then all of the other parts can be randomly rolled. So we have Boom Puppy, which seems to be the legendary roll. So on kill, weapons with Torg license parts have a 50% chance to call down a missile barrage on a nearby enemy. So this sounds like it'd be absolutely ridiculous unless the damage of this absolutely sucks. This thing's probably going to be crazy for most builds using any Torg license parts and using a lot of explosives, because a 50% chance is just a really high chance. It's just a 50-50 if you're going to get this missile barrage. And with some of the density we've gotten to see in Borderlands 4 so far, there's going to be a lot of enemies, and if this does decent damage, this could potentially just get really crazy where you kill an enemy, it drops a barrage on another enemy that helps kill them or kills them, then it has a 50% chance to drop another one and another one. So this could be absolutely ridiculous. But then on this enhancement mod, it also has Explosception, which weapons with Torg license parts fire stickies that hit for a 50% bonus damage when first attached to an enemy. And I think we've seen this exact same roll of Explosception before, so it does seem like this second effect roll can be randomly rolled, because again, when looking at the name of this item, it's Exploding Boom Puppy, and what we've seen with pretty much every other item is that the ending of the name is the legendary roll or like the item specific name, but usually the rest of the text is describing what else is rolled on the item. So that's also going to be really crazy, having these legendary enhancement mods just have one crazy strong effect, but then randomly rolling secondary effects as well. Now, what's also really interesting is this has 2 stat increases. So it has an SMG splash radius increase and an SMG accuracy increase. Now, what's interesting with that is it only has 2 stat rolls on this. Now, there's, I think, a couple possibilities. First off is that the legendary enhancement mod can only have 2 stat rolls on it as well, because it has the 2 effects on it. So only 2 stat rolls. And when you go over to the, say, epic enhancement mods, it has 3 stat rolls because it only has 1 special effect on it. Or maybe it's just lower level, and like we've seen with a lot of other items, it doesn't always have all of the possible rolls it can on it. Like we've seen low level weapons with only 1 weapon par roll on it when they could have up to 4. So maybe that's a possibility, but I am leaning more towards that the legendary enhancement mods will have the 2 special effects on it and then the 2 stat rolls on it. This one does also have a new firmware roll on it we've never seen, which is bullets to spare. Firmware is a more endgame system in Borderlands 4, even though not endgame specific, that are essentially gear sets, and we know they roll on all item slots besides your 4 different weapons, but we still don't get to see what bullets to spare actually does. Now, what's also pretty interesting about this one legendary enhancement mod we've been able to see so far is this is named after a unique weapon from Borderlands 2. And I did also see it pointed out that a lot of the effects we've seen on enhancement mods are seeming to almost copy or be part of the legendary effect of weapons from previous Borderlands games. So it seems like depending on how you make your build, what enhancement mods you're using and legendary weapons you're using, that you may be able to have the legendary effects of up to like 3 legendary weapons from previous Borderlands games, just because of how many different gear slots we have now and how many different crazy effects we can actually get on them, the enhancement mod obviously being a pretty big one now. And if you look at it from that perspective, that's going to be absolutely ridiculous. The amount of just crazy effects and combinations we're going to have access to is going to make Borderlands 4 so ridiculous when it comes to making builds and just finding these crazy combinations, because it's with 100% certainty that with this much variation, this many crazy combinations and effects, that there's just going to be so many broken combinations found. A bunch are probably going to have to be fixed or nerfed, but I would very much not be surprised if months down the road after the launch of Borderlands 4, people are still finding absolutely ridiculous combinations that we've always had access to since the launch of the game, but no one figured to try this weird combination of these enhancement mod effects with this specific legendary or epic weapon, and then it just creates some absolutely ridiculous combination. And then that's not even tying into all of the different skill tree effects and action skills and everything like that that are also going to have some combination possibility with all of these different gear effects. And then we also have firmware that we could see on this item as well, that we have no idea what those effects are actually going to be. And we know that's 5 items firmware can be on. So we got to have 5 different pieces of firmware equipped and have like 1 out of 5 for 5 different sets, or 3 of one set and 2 of another. So there's also just crazy combination possibilities with these firmware sets that again are essentially gear sets that we don't even know what they do. Then we have all of our other items that can also have legendary effects. All of that added together, I think Borderlands 4 is probably going to have more build possibilities than like the rest of the franchise combined. So I, for one, am just getting more and more excited as we get to see more and more of Borderlands 4. I'm somebody that is much more interested in the build crafting of Borderlands games, and Borderlands 4 just keeps adding more and more on top of that with so many ridiculous possibilities. And I think the enhancement mod is actually going to be one of the most important slots in the game. I think it may actually go weapon and enhancement mod, even only based off of seeing one. It seems like the strength of these things are going to be absolutely ridiculous. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.